Welcome everyone to this week's edition of the GSM's Pride Spotlight. This week I have, yet again, Jerry Paule. Well, I thought it was around Christmas time, and there's a couple of reasons why I'm going to interview Jerry again, but we have a different area of opportunity this time because Jerry has a little bit of a claim to fame that he worked for a Hall of Famer baseball player for the St. Louis Cardinals. Isn't that right, Jerry?
That is correct.
So you worked for Lube, right? For how long?
You know, a little over a year.
Okay.
You know, I spent 18 years in the airport. Lube would fly, come up to the ticket counter. Everybody at that time had to come up to a ticket counter and buy a ticket and so forth and so on. So he would come up and he'd visit with us. And then I worked for Delta Airlines from 66 till 84.
Yep.
And then I lost my job, which is a whole nother story we don't need to get into. But
I think we may have touched on that last.
Yeah, we touched on it a little bit. But Delta was going through a time where they were attempting to get rid of people that made more money in any way they could, and hire replacements at 1/3 the cost. And I fell into that. They actually framed me for doing something that I didn't do, just to get rid of me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I never told you that story, but.
Oh, do you want to get into it real quick?
Well, real quick, but you know, I will tell you that I was in a position where they said I did something that I knew I didn't do, and I could prove I didn't do it, but they weren't interested in listening to any of that. And if you lost your job with Delta, they gave you a free pass to fly to Atlanta to state your case, and I took them up on that. I went down there and talked to the people and explained to them and told them exactly what in my view of this whole thing was, and they told me that they weren't interested in that, and if I didn't do what they said, I should tell them who did. And I said, well, I didn't do it. I don't know who. I don't think anybody did it. I think you're just framing people to get rid of them, which they didn't like. So I didn't get to keep the jobs. But the funniest part about the whole thing to me, and I still have this letter at home. My brother owns a big law firm in St. Louis, and I said, we need to sue them people. Now, the one thing, we weren't union, so we were what's called at-will employees. So you had to catch them doing something illegal. So my brother said, you know, anybody that owns a company, have them write a letter to Delta asking for a recommendation. Yeah. So I had somebody do that, and then this person gets a letter back from Delta, and I still have the letter, and I'm pretty sure I can just tell you exactly verbatim what it said. It said, we have searched and searched our files. We can find no Gerald Paule ever having worked for Delta Airlines.
Really?
And then it said, if we had made a mistake, let us know. You know, like they were covering the fact that they were lying.
Because they knew they couldn't give you a bad reference.
Right. They knew they couldn't give me a bad reference. So that didn't help us at all. But it was kind of a funny letter, which, like I said, I still have it at home. But I knew Lube through his travels, and one Easter Sunday, my family and Lou Brock's family ended up having brunch at a hotel near the airport, quite by accident. And I saw him, and my kids were there, my two girls, and they wanted to meet him, and I took them over and introduced him. And he says, well, I haven't seen you at the airport. I said, I'm not there anymore. And he says, well, I'm looking for somebody to manage my two stores. He had a gift shop, and he had a sports shop right next door to each other on the lower level of the airport, and he wanted somebody that was familiar with the travelers at the airport. And so he contacted me later in the week and hired me to be his manager. And basically, when he was in town, which was about half the time, we would have meetings, and we would sit and discuss what we were doing with the stores and so forth and so on. And he would sit there with cases upon cases of baseballs that he had made. and this is called the Lube Hall of Fame ball. He had the ball made. It says Lube Hall of Famer inducted July 28, 1985. The only player to get 3,000 hits and steal 900 bases in a career. And it says the 15th player to be elected to the Hall of Fame on the first try. But he would sit there with a blue magic marker, always blue, and we would do business, and he would sit there signing his name, getting another one, signing his name, getting another one, signing his name. And I asked him one day, I says, "Can you play with these?" He says, "Oh, no, you can't hit them." He says, "You can't hit them, they would fall apart." But these sold for $8 a piece at the sports store.
In what year?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that.
See,
the other thing I have in my hand
staged.
is a pack of matches, St. Louis Cardinals. It said Lube Sports Shop, Lambert International, and on the inside it has the 1986 schedule for the Cardinals.
Oh, really?
So there, that's for your son.
Thank you.
He can't play with matches, and then he can have that too.
You're very kind, Jerry. My son's a really big baseball fan, so this will go really well for him. So 1986, that'd have been pretty cheap, $8 for a signed Hall of Famer ball, right?
Yeah, I looked it up today, and somebody on eBay is trying to sell that ball for $149.
That's what I'm saying. That must be pretty cheap.
We've sold 1 million of those things, so it can't be worth $149. The only reason I had about, when I left his employment, I had about 20 of those balls because I would take out the ones that weren't quite as sharp, the signature.
Yeah.
And I ended up, they were in my possession, and I still had them when I left. So over the years, that's the very last one that I have. And
Lou Brock's still alive, right?
no, he just died last year.
It was, yeah, I thought it was recently.
But the couple stories that I have about Lou Brock that I find are kind of funny.
Well, that's why we're doing this, Jerry. Let's hear these stories.
I remember him telling me one day that he was so fast that he could turn the lights off in his bedroom when he was a boy and be under the covers before the lights went off.
He can run faster than the speed of sound, speed of light.
That's what he told me. But my funniest story.
That is a funny
I've told you this already, and I've told this story before. He would come. I would be working in there in the evening a lot in the sports shop, and he would fly into town, and he'd always stop to see how things were going and so forth and so on. And one night he asked me, he says, "Jerry, do you know why this store does so good?" And I said, "Well, I got a pretty good idea, Lou." And he says, what do you think? And I said, "Well, KMOX has got this huge radio audience across the United States, and people from Texas or California, or there's only a couple states that don't receive KMOX. They'd say, 'I'm going to St. Louis,' and somebody would be a Cardinal fan, and they'd say, 'Well, pick me up a hat or a shirt or something.' And then they'd get to the airport, and
Pick it up.
right there was Lou Brock's store. And I said, that's, as far as I could tell, that would be the reason, Lou, that it would be so popular. And he said, no, that's not the reason. And I said, "Well, what's the reason?" He says, "'Cause of me." And I says, "Well, I got one question for you. If it's because of you, how come so many people come in the store and ask me if I'm Lou Brock?" And he wasn't real happy with that story.
You didn't get fired over it, did you?
No. But our relationship started going downhill after that. You know.
Well, I wonder why.
He hired somebody that he didn't know that I would always say what I felt, and I guess that's what he got. You know.
Yeah.
And you couldn't argue.
And for anyone who doesn't know this, but obviously Lou Brock was a black gentleman that played baseball. He wasn't a white older guy.
That is correct. We didn't look alike. I have one other story that my daughter, I should have, she still has it, but my daughter, I have twin daughters, and they were born in '75, so 86, 11 years old. My one daughter, Jennifer, painted a picture of Lube.
Oh, really?
In school, and it was a black man with blue eyes, and it said Lube, an oldie but a goodie. And I took one look at it and cracked up, and I brought it into the store and showed it to Lou. And
is that the reason you got fired?
I showed it to him, and he signed it to Jennifer,
yeah,
and told her what a great picture it was and what a great job she did, you know, and she still has it. But
that's cool.
It's just kind of a funny thing, but
see, that's worth some money right there.
Yeah.
Put that up on eBay. That's
well, yeah,
one of those.
Absolutely. A one of a kind painting that was signed by Lou Brock. They're not going to be around very much.
Yeah, I don't know. It painting. I wouldn't call it a painting. It was more like a
stick
construction paper, you know, like they would do in a grade school. But but that's my story about Lou Brock.
What was it like to work for, Jerry?
He was a better baseball player than he was
a manager.
A manager
or an owner.
Yeah, an owner of a store. You know, he just that's the best I can say. You know, we got along well for the most part, but it got to the point where he didn't manage his money real well, and sometimes I would pay the people that work for me, and then they would go to the bank at them days with a check, and sometimes the check didn't clear, and he owed me. He made me a promise, and then he didn't fulfill the promise, and I asked him, "You owe me this money. I want it." And once again, I was talking to him like nobody should have talked to him. That's the way he felt. And so we agreed to part ways, and he gave me my money, and I ran to the bank, and it was still there. So, so that was the end of it. But and then I never talked to him again. But the airport was a neat place. I met several athletes, famous athletes, and famous people.
One of them's really famous, right?
Really, really famous.
Yeah, like really, really famous.
Muhammad Ali, is
yeah.
that the one? Yeah, I've met him 2 different times, and the thing that I remember, he was a very nice man, very gentleman. I shook his hands on both occasions. My hand disappeared inside his hand. His hand was twice the size of my hand, and just a really nice man. Dick Weber, the bowler, I don't know if you know who that is.
Yeah, I've heard of him, yeah.
But he spent a lot of time at the ticket counter. A lot of these guys...
was it his son, Pete Weber? Yeah.
But Dick, the father, and a lot of these guys just liked, for some reason, to hang out with people that didn't ask them for anything. And one of the things that I made a habit of, anybody famous, I'd never ask them for a thing, never ask them for an autograph. One of my other stories that I can remember like it happened yesterday, we were on the upper level, Delta's ticket counter, and the St. Louis Blues, anytime they were flying out, they would separate from everybody else all around this escalator. And on a fishing line, clear fishing line, they would put a $5 bill, and they would put it at the top of the escalator, and then somebody would come riding up to us, some passenger, and they'd see that $5 bill, and they'd go for it, and then they would pull it, and then there'd be 20 Blues just laughing and pointing at them, and just crazy stuff. Crazy stuff. But that's basically that. I don't know. I can't think of anybody else, but it was just a fun. When I worked there at the airport, it was probably the most fun place you could work, and every passenger was happy.
Yeah.
And now you go in there, you can't find a smile.
Yeah.
So it's a sad thing for me to go to the airport now.
Well, thanks for giving us a little bit of insight on the world of you working for Lou Brock. Thank you for my gifts. I appreciate it. My son's going to really like it a lot.
It was kind of fun.
Yeah. So one thing I did want to touch on very last. This will go out after but I do want to wish you a very happy birthday on the 24th of December, which is always Christmas Eve.
Yeah,
and I want you to tell a very brief story of the very first day that I came to work here about your birthday.
I figured I had better educate you, and
Bear in mind, I was his boss.
and it's anybody that knows me knows I never work on my birthday. You know, when you're born on December 24th, you get the short end of the stick. You usually get when you're a kid, you get one present wrapped in Christmas paper, and this is true, and it says "Happy Birthday, Merry Christmas." And as you're looking at it, you're thinking of the kid that was born in June that's going to have a Christmas present, and then in June he's going to have a birthday present wrapped in birthday.
That would be me.
Correct. So it's never been fair. I've complained about it my whole life, and when I was 50, my family threw me my very first birthday party ever.
Okay.
Who's got time for it, you know?
Yeah.
It's Christmas. So this year, I will, on Friday, I will be 75 years old. Never in my wildest imagination did I ever think I would live this long. But
Jerry, you'll outlive us all.
I hope not. I'll be one angry person. But that's the story on the birthday.
Well, happy birthday for the 24th. It is Jerry's 75th. I'm proud to say that I have been around Jerry long enough to see his 75th birthday. But yeah, he came in, the very first interaction was, just so you know, I take my birthday off every year, and it's 24th.
I forgot that part when I was telling the story, yeah.
But anyway, thanks for joining me again, Jerry. It's always good getting your stories.
We're running out of topics.
No, we're not. We've got plenty. 75 years is a long time, Jerry.
I know.
As always, over at Lube Fuse Ford, we can replace the car, not the customer, and I'll see you all next week.
Knowledge is the key, then just show me the lock. Got the scrawny legs, but I move just like Lube rock with speed. I'm agile, plus I'm worth your while. 100% intelligent black child. My optic presentation sizzles the retina. How far must you go to gain respect?